Welcome everyone. Hope you had a nice break. In this session, we're going to be thinking about the UDL principle of multiple means of expression. So we're a small group this time. Anytime you want, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself. And anytime you'd like to unmute yourself, feel free to do so to interject. How many of you are accustomed to UDL? You've done some work in the area of UDL. Right. So a few of us have. All right. So you recognize multiple means of expression as a principle of UDL. I'm going to share my screen. You know, when I think about UDL, and maybe you all feel the same way, when I think about all of the strategies within each of the principles and checkpoints and so forth, there are a lot of strategies that are really not like new or revolutionary, right? But the framework is excellent and bringing intention to, you know, how we use those strategies to build access and engagement and understanding and knowing what students understand and are able to do. But when I think about the principle of multiple means of expression, I don't know that we implement multiple means of expression as often as we do multiple means of engagement and representation. So that's what we're going to be thinking about today. So were all of you in the session that I just did on the last session? Okay, how about this? Do the thumbs up if you were not, or do the clap if you were not in the session that I just did. Okay, so there were a few people. Okay, so in the last session, I talked about universal design for learning as much like this curb cut, like the ramps we see around us, how the ramps and curb cuts that are in our environment, they're necessary if you use a wheelchair, but they help a lot of other people too. They help people who have strollers, bikes, hand trucks, all kinds of people are benefiting by having curb cuts and by having ramps. So a lot of the things that we're already doing, like advanced organizers, graphic organizers, close reading protocols, peer-assisted learning, chunking, mnemonics, a lot of these strategies had their roots in special education as interventions for kids who had disabilities. And now we're recognizing, yes, just like ramps are necessary for someone who uses a wheelchair, and they help a lot of other people too, these strategies may be necessary to reach a student who has a particular diagnosis, but they help a whole lot of other people too. Yes, so Valerie, common assessments, that's a great non-example of multiple means of expression. Or really many external exams. So many of the external exams that students have to take, some states have, you know, universal exams, end of course exams that people have to take, ACTs, SATs, you know, all of these set one way of assessing are great non-examples of multiple means of expression. So within UDL, we are using lots of strategies to help reach more learners. And as we're doing that, a lot of times there is not still in place the options for students to show what they know in a variety of ways each time. So that's what I want us to think about today. If you have not visited, if UDL is new to you, you may want to visit udlguidelines.cas.org. I can type it here too, so that you can learn more about the UDL guidelines and its checkpoints, its principles. Each of these checkpoints is connected to specific research that supports its use. I will tell you though, the UDL guidelines that were put out by CAST and developed by their researchers, they're amazing. They do have their roots in special education, supporting students with disabilities in general education environments through, you know, designing for everyone in a way that is more accessible and accommodating. And there is a lot of focus on technology. And so today I'm not going to really focus as much on technology and assistive technology in particular, so that we can think really about all the many ways that we can give students options, where we have options and where we don't, which type of options compromise the validity of an instrument and which types of options enhance the validity of the assessments that we're conducting. So the CAST guidelines, CAST is the original source. This is the original, these are the original organization that put out UDL. Now, when we put into place universal design for instruction, we need fewer accommodations and modifications, and we have better measurement validity. Now, as we think through some of the options that we have for multiple means of expression, you may be thinking, these sound a lot like differentiation, or this sounds a lot like accommodations that we make. The difference between UDL and differentiation, or making accommodations, is that differentiation and accommodations are made for individual students because of a learning difference they have or a need that they have. UDL is put into place, we don't even have to know who our students are to put UDL into place. It's a way of designing our instruction, engagement, and the way that we assess from the outset that assumes we are going to have variability in our classes. So that's really the difference, is it's assuming variability and designing from the outset proactively rather than reacting to specific needs within our classrooms. We still need differentiation, we still need accommodations, we still need modifications. But the more UDL we do, the more of this we put into place, the less special accommodations and differentiation that we need to make on the other side. You may have seen this cartoon. Mike Giangreco has great work out there, and a lot of cartoons he had commissioned, a couple of decades ago. And we see the example here, where if we just shovel the ramp, then everybody can get in. We don't have to shovel the steps and then the ramp, just shovel the ramp, then the steps, I guess if you want. But, everybody can get in when you shovel the steps. And that's what we're talking about, is opening up access. But within multiple means of expression, we're talking about eliciting each student's best performance, their best understanding, and allowing access for this. All right, so I was at a school in Tokyo this past year, and I ran across this in the school. This is these are the buttons to access the elevator in that school. Is this an example of universal design? It's kind of tricky. I've chosen a tricky example on purpose. I mean, it kind of is, but really, we don't even need, this is the first floor, so we only have an up button. We didn't really need two. I mean, you can see that they've put into place the regular height button that they would normally put into place, and they added an up button at a lower location so that people who use wheelchairs or people who are smaller could access the up button. But really, universal design, we would just place the button lower. We don't really even have to have a special adaptation there. So multiple means of expression means that we have a set goal, we have a set outcome, a set place where we want to arrive, be those learning targets, standards, goals for this lesson, and there are multiple paths to get there. There are many ways to show what we know and do. So as long as our goals are focused on understandings and skills and not a task, there are lots of ways to show what we know. So what I'd like for us to do first, I'm going to put us into breakout groups. If I see that option, I think I have to stop sharing. Okay, so I'll do that in a minute, because I don't think I can put you into breakout groups until I do that. No. Okay, so I'm going to put you into breakout groups in just a minute to think about this question, to think about how you perform best as a teacher. So let's say, okay, all of you are an expert on something. You all have expertise and, are a rock star at teaching or doing something. And if I wanted to see that, I wanted to gain from what you know in your area of expertise, how would you like to show me that? Let's say it's a particular expertise in teaching. Would you like to do what I'm doing right now and speak on camera? Would you like to speak to a group of adults? Maybe it's a large group. What if it's a group of 5,000 adults and you're speaking live in front of a group of 5,000 people to teach us what you know about this area of expertise? Would you rather write an article or a blog or a book to teach us what you know about this? Do you thrive when you get creative? Like when you have the chance to in some way get creative with what you're teaching? Would that help you show what you knew best? What about a recorded presentation? Instead of doing live like I'm doing now, you've recorded yourself presenting on what you know about this to teach us, and you share that with us. Or would you perform best if it was a small group, informal conversation? So maybe you and me and 3 other people. Would you do better if that was 3 or 4 people you know really well and work together with? Or would it be better if those are people you don't know? So I'm going to stop the share now and put you into small groups. And I want you to think about under what conditions do you perform best, and share this with the people in your group. And so there'll be 4 or 5 people in each breakout room, and we'll come back in 5 minutes. All right, so each person gets about a minute to talk about how they perform best, how they would show us their area of expertise, and maybe a little bit of why. All right, see you back in 5 minutes. All right, everybody will be back in about 30 seconds. Here they come. All right, welcome back. So in the chat, tell me how you show what you know best, how you would like to teach me something about your area of expertise. Small group discussions, pre-recorded video, getting creative, small group, writing, presenting, small group, large group, modeling, small group, and writing. All right, so there are a variety of ways that you all like to show what you know. So large group or video, because maybe that's the way you're used to, that's what you're used to doing, right? You know, some people feel paralyzed about speaking in front of large groups. Other people, I heard somebody say that wouldn't faze me at all to speak in front of 5,000 people. You know, more power to you. I get a little nervous no matter what, but you know, and similarly, like one person said, I like the video, recorded video, and we're all getting more used to that in this, you know, time of COVID, but because I can fix it. I can go back and redo it if I need to. You all, I get totally frozen in front of like recorded video. I do it, and I do it all the time, and I guess I do okay at my desk, but I have some that are professionally recorded to make our courses a little nicer. And I get so nervous when there's a big camera and big lights, and you know, I don't know how actors do it. Yeah, so I mean, we all have our own preferences. If you were to be testing me on what I know, like how would you do if I gave you a timed test on this and you had to write an essay on it? Some of you would do great, some of you wouldn't. What if I gave you a multiple choice test on it? You know, some of you are overthinkers. You're going to overthink it, and every answer is going to look right. You're going to make every answer right or every answer wrong, you know, and so then that would be tricky. And for others, you're like, woohoo, I love that. That's like a game to me. The point being, our students, just like us, have different preferences, and it's not just about preferences and options, but we perform better or worse under certain circumstances. So if we think about that, and if you are a person who said you really prefer speaking in a small group and you really would hate to publish writing, like you would hate to publish an article in a journal about this topic, if you hate that, and you may think you may not perform as well. You may not show us what you know as well in that format. And if I'm assessing what you know about it in a way in which the format itself damages your performance, I'm not getting a valid measure of your understanding. If, on the other hand, you say, I really like to write, and I heard a couple of people say, I really like to write, it gives me a chance to think about it and reflect and say it just the way I want to say it, which I feel the same way sometimes. And, you know, speaking live, I don't want to do that because I want to have a chance to think exactly about exactly how I want to say it. If you're that person, and I assess what you know by putting you in front of 5,000 people, and if that makes you nervous and you don't prefer the format of public speaking, it's probably going to affect your performance. And I'm not going to get as good of information about what you know on the topic simply because I made you do it that way. So just like there was variation within your groups, not everybody preferred or felt they would perform the best in the same way, our students are the same. And so the format or the mode of expression, the mean of expression, these are 6 different means of expressing what you know, can actually be a confounding variable. So a confounding variable is something that's getting in the way of your measuring what you're trying to measure. It harms the validity of your measure. And for many students, you know, we want students to be as versatile as possible and be able to present and write and communicate informally and formally. But if that's not what we're measuring, if I'm not measuring the skill of public speaking, then that mode of assessment might be a confounding variable for students who don't perform as well. It will be. It is a confounding variable for students who don't perform as well in using that means. Does that make sense? It can actually, it's not about just being fair and offering options. We want to be fair and we want to offer choice, because choice all by itself is engaging. It gives students agency and voice, and it's engaging. So that's an awesome thing to do. But it also increases the validity of our measure. It increases the validity of our measure. And if we're conducting an assessment, we need to know with validity what a student can do and where they need support. The whole purpose of classroom assessment is to inform our instruction and inform learning. We sometimes are told that the purpose is to generate a grade, but that's not really the purpose of assessment. The purpose of assessment is to inform our instruction and is to support students' learning. That's the purpose of it. So if that's the purpose of it, it better give us some good information. It better be valid and help us know what students are really able to do. So this quickly becomes an issue of equity, right? Certain disabilities, certain learning differences make it such that modes of assessment are serious threats to the validity of the measure. So if a student has a learning disability and that affects their writing skills, any mode of assessment where we are using writing to assess something other than writing becomes a confounding variable. We do still need to assess writing. Students still do need to write. We still need to want to teach writing and intervene if a student is having trouble with that. But we certainly don't want to use that as the way we're assessing everything else. Students who have IEPs and students who are significantly behind grade level are the canaries in the coal mine. You all know what that refers to? So the canaries in the coal mine, these were coal miners used to, and not so long ago really, used to take canaries into the coal mines with them, because if there were harmful gases, it would harm the canary before it would harm the humans. They were the most vulnerable, right? And so they knew to get out if it harmed the canary. Well, the same happens in our schools all the time with all kinds of practices. Just because it doesn't harm everyone and from the outset doesn't mean it's a great practice. So, but our students who are more vulnerable, students who are more marginalized, students who have disabilities, students who are behind grade level for a number of given reasons, are going to be the first to be harmed by not offering multiple means of expression. They're going to be the first who are harmed, and yet we may not change practice because we don't see it harming everyone directly. So I'd like to give you a contemporary example. My daughter started university this year, so quite a year to begin, right? And so she had, you know, in her first semester though, her first semester was, you know, all in person, and she decided to take statistics to fill her mathematics requirement. She had taken it in high school. She did really well. She had a good understanding of statistics. And her teacher was great. Like her statistics professor, you know, used contemporary examples, you know, to make studying statistics more interesting. She engaged students. She did a great job of presenting the content in multiple ways and multiple means. And it was great. The way the professor assessed students, however, was that they went into a computer lab and they had to have memorized Excel spreadsheet formula in order to calculate, you know, in order to use a statistical procedure and then interpret the results. Now, I'm pretty sure if we were to ask this professor, and if you were with me earlier, you know, if we were to ask her, what's really life-changing about this course? What's really important that students get out of this course? What's so important about your class? You know, I'm pretty sure She would have said, well, you know, we want to keep doors open for any student who needs to use statistics in the future. That's part of it. But, you know, but yeah, but what's really important for everybody? What do people need out of this class? She probably would have said it's really important that students have an understanding of what statistics are, you know, what the procedures are, that they have some understanding of really how to interpret when they see people present statistics and know, you know, be able to have some understanding of that and know if it was done well. And we probably want students, in order to pass a college course on statistics, be able to select the right procedure, use the procedure, and say what the results mean. And what do they practically mean? What do they mean we should do? Does it mean we, you know, accept the hypothesis or reject it and so forth? Or actually you accept the null hypothesis or reject the null hypothesis. But anyway, I'm sure that's what she would have said. I'm sure if we had this conversation with this professor, she never would have said, it is really, really important that people can memorize Excel spreadsheet formulas. I don't think that would have been anywhere on her list of what she would have said is really important to learn, right? But that's what she's measuring. Because many students could not pass the class because they could not memorize the statistical formula. My daughter had to drop the class and she understood the statistics. But as a person who has dyslexia, memorizing formula in isolation, you know, is incredibly difficult. And it really probably wasn't what was important to learn. So why does she do this? One, the professor probably doesn't realize that that's what she's measuring. She probably doesn't realize that she has a confounding variable that's getting in the way of her measuring what she would really say is important to learn. The other problem that could be happening, that we see happen in upper school, but not in elementary, so this part probably won't apply if you're an elementary teacher, is her definition of rigor. She sees that this is a rigorous class. And I know it's a rigorous class if not too many students are getting high grades, and I can ensure that if I make things really hard and tricky. But rigor isn't about things being tricky or jumping through hoops. Rigor is all about having a deep understanding or mastery of a skill. You know, you've really got it. It has nothing to do with jumping through hoops. I mean, you remember when we were in school, our teachers would sometimes put really tricky questions on the test just so it was harder, but it didn't necessarily increase the rigor. It was a tricky item from page 89 to make sure you read page 89, you know, or to help make sure not too many kids had A's, right? But the issue is that by measuring in this one way, there's a confounding variable there that's getting in the way of what she wants to measure. There were lots of options available for her to measure whether students could select the right procedures and use them and interpret results. Lots of options out there. So I want us to think about skills versus tasks. All right, so skills and understanding. So deep understandings and skills versus the task. So the construct, what you're trying to measure, what you're trying to assess are skills and understandings. You're trying to understand how well does a student know something, understand it, or how well can they do something. That's what you're trying to get at. The task is only the measure. It's only an experience. It's not what you're trying to measure. You're not trying to measure how well do they perform on a test. You're trying to measure what do they know or understand or what can they do. That's what you're trying to measure. So the old way, when we were all in school, most of us probably, right? Skills and understandings, you gained enough skills and enough knowledge to complete the tasks that got you good grades. The focus was on the measure, it was on the task. How do I perform well enough on this task that everyone has? Everyone gets the same homework, everyone gets the same test, everyone gets the same assignments to do. The new way, the mastery-oriented way, and there's loads of literature about the effects of moving to a mastery-oriented system versus a performance-oriented or a task-oriented system. It affects academic integrity, If any of you all had to worry about students getting extra help that you didn't want them to get, or seeking outside resources you didn't want them to seek during this time of home learning, there's a lot in the cheating literature about the effects of having a mastery orientation versus a performance one. So it's not just about measurement validity, it's about everything. It's about engagement, it's about academic integrity, it's about, a lot. So the new way is the tasks, the tests, the assignments, and the homework are a means to do and understand. It's just a vehicle. It's just one way, one of numerous ways that you could have shown you had that skill or understanding or knowledge, right? So the focus then really should be on the construct. It should be on the skill that we're understanding, not on the task. So if we think about that example from my daughter, the focus was completely on how well did you perform on this task. It was not really a focus on the understanding, on the life-changing skills that that teacher would have said really mattered. So sometimes it's that we have to rethink our assessment options to make sure we're actually measuring what we meant to measure and that nothing's getting in the way, in addition to giving many options to students. Anybody here have a background in early childhood or early childhood special ed? So that's my background. Early childhood meaning up through 3rd grade. And one of the assessments that we give in early childhood is called the Battelle Developmental Inventory. All right, so one person nodded. So I got a knowing nod from one person who knows what that is and has heard of this. Maybe some of you have heard of this instrument. I'm going to use this to illustrate the same point. In that instrument, there's one item, stacks 9 1-inch cubes in a coffee mug. That is an item. That is an item on this instrument. Can you demonstrate it? And then the young child, can they take these cubes that kind of look like these cubes, and can they stack those, 9 of them, in a coffee mug? It's an assessment item. That item is only the measure. I am never going to write an IEP goal that a student will stack 9 1-inch cubes in a coffee mug. You can go your whole life and not stack 9 1-inch cubes in a coffee mug and be fine. Maybe you have gone your whole life and you've never done this and you're fine, right? You all, there are a lot of assessments and assignments and tasks that we give students that they could go their whole life never doing and be just fine. That is simply the measure, okay? So that's an obvious one. That's not, but what are the constructs? What are we measuring when we're asking young children to stack cubes? We're measuring, one, their spatial matching. Can they take a look at, can they take a look at this sticky note and this sticky note and know, well, I got 2 there. Can they look at those and without measuring them, they've got spatial matching. They know they're the same size and shape. You have evidence, just as a novelty, just trivia for the day, you have evidence that a young child has spatial matching when they stack them and they start pinching them together to make them really line up well. They know they're the same size and shape. So that's one construct. You're measuring persistence. So for the child where this is really difficult and they keep going, even when it's hard, they keep going and they pick it up when it falls over and they keep trying, that's persistence. That's also one of the key predictors of later outcomes is the student's mastery motivation. We're measuring what kind of grasp do they have. Do they grasp it like with their whole hand like this? Or do they put their thumb opposite their fingers? We're measuring their receptive language. Do they understand what I asked them to do? Those are the skills. This is the stuff we want kids to develop. Stacking 9 1-inch cubes in a coffee mug is only the construct. You know what? I can teach, I can measure whether that child has those skills with a whole lot of different kind of toys. It doesn't have to be the cubes that came in the Battelle Developmental Inventory. I can take a look at spatial matching and persistence and mastery motivation and all of those skills, receptive language, all of those skills with these items as well. In fact, I don't even need special items. I can use stuff around the house and see whether a child has these skills. All right, I give this example because you'll remember this example now, right? You'll remember it because of the pictures and it's not what we normally do. But we do the same thing every day. This is a standard, this is a pulled from a standard that really happens across grade divisions. We want kids and human beings, all human beings need to be able to do this. Please be able to do this right now. To be able to make a claim and support that claim with evidence, support that claim with credible and sufficient evidence. Like that's what we want people to be able to do. We want young kids to be able to do this in less sophisticated and less complex ways than we want a senior to be able to do this or an adult to be able to do this. Although I would settle for what we want fourth graders to do right now, you know, but like we want people to be able to support their claim with evidence. So in an upper school assignment, I may assign a research paper. All right, everybody, we're gonna learn all about, you know, we're learning about this, and I wanna know, can you write a research paper? And you need to write a persuasive paper, and but you need to support your claims. You need to support your claims with evidence. Everybody, you're gonna write, oh, let's make it 7th grade. You're gonna write a 5-paragraph essay. Authors don't write 5-paragraph essays, but this, for whatever reason, has become like the thing that kids do, 5-paragraph essays. Or you're a senior, you're gonna write a term paper, you're gonna write a lengthy research paper, but this is what I'm looking for. And I'm probably looking for some other things too, right? But this is one of the standards I'm looking for. And the way I've measured it is through a research paper. This is the construct. This is what I want to measure. Can you make a claim? Can you support that claim with evidence? This is the measure. It is one of numerous ways we can see how students know to be able to do this, what their skill level is in doing this. Now, sometimes we think of multiple means of measurement is, okay, I'm going to give everybody a term paper or a research paper, then I'm going to give them this task, then I'm going to give them that task. But really, we don't even have to do it consecutively. We can do it concurrently. We can concurrently, for this assessment, give students many options to show what they know. So you can think about something maybe recently that you've taught students. I know you've been on break, or something you're about to teach students, right? And how did you assess this? Or if you're an administrator or a technical assistance provider, you've been in a classroom and you've seen a teacher measure something. They're measuring a particular construct in a certain way. Did that person, or did you give many options? Were there options and choices within that assignment? So like a really simple example is students could choose what they're writing about, or they could choose what they're, you know, they could choose what they're reading. They could choose what, you know, content they're into, but they're having to demonstrate this skill, you know, they're having to demonstrate the skill. When there are no options and only one way of showing what we know, those confounding variables are there. We're back to having you only present in front of 5,000 people. Or for the 2 of you who said they didn't mind that, we're back to, I don't know, having you do whatever you don't like, you know, whatever is harder for you. You have to do a recorded presentation. Or you have to do a live recorded presentation that's pumped into an audience of 5,000 people. That would be horrible, because then you couldn't see anybody, and so many of them, and then it's not recorded. But when we don't give options, that's what we're doing to students. We're doing that exact thing to students. And the students for whom that option is a problem are at a serious disadvantage. They are not able to show what they know now. So the student who has dyslexia and is, you know, has caught up really well with reading skills, but is still really behind with writing, and you ask them to show that they know how to have a claim and support it with evidence in a written research paper, you may not get their best performance. That you may not be able to measure what they know and are able to do, because you're measuring how well can they write the paper. So when we think about that particular skill, I mean, this is just some. These are just some that I put together. We can do this in lots more ways than this, but we might be able to, you know, it might be that a student really wants to do a video presentation, and they could do that live. I'm over here. Can you see the little cursor? I'm in the kind of top left. So that student might show that they can stake a claim and give sufficient credible evidence, and they do it in a live presentation like this right now. They might do it with the whole class. They might do it with just you. They might do it with a small group. They might prefer a recorded presentation. They could do a written paper that is the research paper, that's still over there. Or they might enjoy putting together an online publication of some kind, maybe getting creative and creating some kind of blog. They might want to show what they know through a live presentation. And it might be, as many of you chose, they might prefer to do that with a small group rather than the pressure of a whole group. They might want to put together a news program. So you might have several students who are, really like to work collaboratively, that's how they enjoy working, and they do a live news program. Or they might do a recorded news program. They're still having to do the same thing. The bar is still the same. They might have a live debate with just the debaters or a fishbowl in front of everybody. They might create a written news article, and it could be just the text, just the facts, or it could be somebody really wants to get creative and create a whole online publication to do this. So many options that students could have to show what they know. And it may be that these are the options I came up with for students. And then I could say, and if you can think of one, propose it. No guarantees, but you propose some, a way that you'd like to show that you've got this, and I'll consider it. We'll talk about it. And the idea is that we just want to have students be able to show what they're able to do with this, keep the bar high, but there are many ways to show it. If I'm not measuring writing skills, then all of these options are available to me. If this is what I'm really interested in, then all of these options are available. Now, some people may feel overwhelmed. Like if you were to, maybe you feel great about this, but you speak to your colleague about it and they're like, that sounds scary. How do I give all those options? First question that comes up often is, how do I create a rubric for all of those? All right, so the answer is, you all know this. You have to create a task agnostic rubric. The rubric has to be all about the skill and not at all about the task. It can't say, write a 5-page paper about yada yada, or a 5-minute presentation. It's got to remove all of the task requirements, which makes us have to think much deeper about what it really looks like, how it really looks to be able to support a claim with sufficient credible evidence. So we have to think deeper about the meaning of that standard or that skill and that goal, and think about all of the ways that can look. And that way we're really harnessing the power of the strengths of our students. I mean, not everybody has to be, have their best strength be in writing and also equally as strong in speaking in front of large groups and small groups. It's wonderful that we're diverse in our strengths. And so being able to use students' strengths to show what they know while we work to build strengths, right? We're wanting to, if a student doesn't feel great about writing, it doesn't mean we're going to stop teaching writing and we're going to stop measuring writing. It means in science or in social studies, we're going to give all kinds of options and not let writing be the only option while the student is gaining that instruction. Makes sense? Yeah, so we have to have rubrics that are truly about the skill and the understanding and not about the task. I mean, I did this. I remember creating rubrics in my college classes, that it would be at least 4 pages and cite at least X number of references. The number of references might still belong there, but cites at least this number of sources and free of grammatical errors. And I wasn't teaching language arts, I was teaching special education. I did not, that was not what I needed to be measuring. I should give feedback on these things, but that should not be what I'm reporting on in a intervention kind of class, right? That's just, you'll also get this question, wait, that doesn't sound fair. That doesn't seem fair that one student can do a news program where another student is writing a research paper. Well, if we're using each student's strengths, there's nothing that is more fair, right? Nothing is more fair. We're using every student's strengths, and we get choice and voice, and you all, this is just immediately engaging, right? You tell everybody they've got to write a paper. The people who like to write papers get excited-ish, And then the people who don't, you know, oh, you know, moan and groan. But a lot of kids really like to get creative, you know, and sometimes they like to get creative with visuals like I do. Like I really enjoy, part of what I enjoy about preparing for teaching is creating visuals that work and visuals that share, which is part of universal design too. But, you know, I don't have to make the fonts interesting and such, you know, I don't have to pay attention to colors and all, but that's fun. That's fun for me. And a lot of students feel that way. A lot of people feel that way. And so the moment we give that option, then that gets exciting. We do have to be careful though, when we offer these options of creativity, that we don't let students like lose sight of the target and they make the target the creativity, like the target, like, no, that's just a means. That's one way that you're showing. You still have to hit the target, right? You still have to hit that. It can't just be, I can remember doing student teaching with, kindergarten teachers, and these brand new teachers had this super cute activity, and it was so fun and super cute and bright and colorful and all the materials and the whole thing, and they really couldn't tell you what like standard they're working on. They couldn't tell you because it was all about the activity and all about the creativity and not really about the standard. The idea is that giving these options and these ways of producing allows us to use students' best strengths, their best performance. It is engaging, but we keep our eye on the prize. Our eye is on, making a claim and supporting it with sufficient evidence. So what we're talking about is being stubborn on standards, stubborn on our expectations, but totally flexible on any of the details. All the details are flexible. So we're talking about what's fixed is the standard or the goal. What's flexed is kind of everything else, just about. When we know what our North Star is, and our North Star is supporting a claim with sufficient and credible evidence, our options are clear. Everything else except for that can flex. That can't flex. That has to be what we're doing, but everything else can flex. So in other words, when we know our construct, we have to know the construct that we're measuring. It makes our options for measures really clear. But I know that we've all seen, we've all been in classrooms and have seen classrooms where it is all about the task. I remember in 8th grade, and insert your own anecdote here, right? In 8th grade, Mrs. Rayburn, who I adored, I really did. But, everybody had to do the acids and bases test, and everybody dreaded 8th grade because in 8th grade, that's when you had to do this. You had to list something like 100 facts about acids and 75 about bases, like seriously. And I get it, like it was in part her way to say, you're about to enter high school, get ready, it's hard. Like I get it, I get what she was going for. And she was a really sweet, and kind woman. But she saw it her duty to get people ready for the real world, and then it was going to be hard and maybe not as nurturing as 7th grade, So, but it was all about the task. It was all about the measure. And frankly, I don't think I remember anything about acids and bases, except, I guess I can't remember anything. I know it has something to do with pH. I know there is litmus paper involved. I don't remember anything. I'm sure I got them all right. Like I got it all right. I acquired the skill. It's not even a skill. I acquired the knowledge. I acquired knowledge that I don't guess I used. I guess the skill I probably acquired, I probably gained some confidence. I gained confidence that I could learn something hard and I could do it. So if that gave me self-efficacy, that's really great. Might have harmed some kids' self-efficacy, definitely did, because it was a super hard task. So insert your own anecdote. Everybody can think of something kind of like that, right? Everybody, where you had to jump through a hoop. And it was all about the task and not about the measure. Now, there are teachers who, especially in upper school, are still struggling with this definition of rigor. They're still struggling with this. And so it's a journey to get through this and realize that, memorize the president's order. Oh, I had to do that too. I remember I don't remember all of them, but I do remember some. But Yeah, so but there are people who still struggle with this because this is it's like your rite of passage in the class. You have to be able to do this in order to, yeah, that one too. And you have to be able to do this in order to show you're worthy in some way, or show that you're really an 8th grader, or really a 5th grader there, really, that you've really got it, when we really should be focusing on those life-changing skills, life-changing things. Now, I do want students to have exposure to this and know the importance of, and have knowledge. You want students to have knowledge, and you want to teach knowledge, but we also want to teach students how to find knowledge, how to find credible knowledge, and that's probably more important, and how to judge whether knowledge is credible, and that's really more important. That's really a lot more important. So multiple means of measurement, multiple means of expression, helps us get at what matters most. It helps us make it accessible for all students, but not just students with disabilities. You all, in this group, some of you may have a disability, many of you don't, and we still had areas where we could identify where a means of expression would affect our performance. So you don't have to have a disability to need multiple means of expression. We all do. We all need this in order to improve our measurement validity. So, with a little bit of time left, I would love, there are plenty, there's not too many people here, so it's fine, there's plenty of bandwidth if you'd like to unmute, ask a question, insert an anecdote, tell us something wonderful that you've experienced with this, or an idea you had to try. Tell us a funny joke.
I'll give a real life example. I'm the AT tech, so I actually did some presentations on UDL this week, including an intro to UDL, and I've given this my poor kid because I use him as my example all the time. He's going to 8th grade, but this is a non-example of when he was in 4th grade. They had to do book reports like every 6 weeks, and every book report they had to do a different way to show a means of action expression, to show that they read and understood the content of the book. Sometimes it was writing a traditional book report, but my son has fine motor difficulties. He was screened for OT, didn't qualify, but probably should have had it, kind of thing. And he cannot draw, and his handwriting is illegible. Now, as 3rd grade teacher, they had to do a cereal box project, and I talked to her about my concerns with his drawings and handwriting. So she let him use like Google Images as long as he cited them. She let him type to tape it on the cereal box instead of drawing and handwriting. So she was, being flexible. But in 4th grade, his teacher had no flexibility. Like, he read the book Hatchet, and they had to draw a picture for something from each letter of the alphabet that went with the book. So we're talking, well, it wasn't quite 20. I think it was like, he said he thought it was like 18 or 20 pictures, because like X, they didn't have to do them for. He had to draw like 18 pictures. Okay, it took him an hour to do 3. We were both in tears. I ended up drawing half the pictures because it's not like he didn't understand the book. He had to write like a sentence, like it was a picture of, I don't know, whatever, the lake, and they had to write what the lake, why that was an important element in the story. And I asked his teacher, I said, he has fine motor issues, he can't draw, can't he just find Google Images or like, stock photos instead of drawing? She said, absolutely not, he must draw them. Well, I complained to the principal about this afterwards. I helped him draw the pictures because it wasn't worth it. And I worked at the building he went to school, so it was just it was just a very bad situation, because through the grapevine, the teacher found out. I reported her and that I complained about this project. Right after that, the next book report, they were given options to choose from. The next school year, they got rid of book reports altogether. And my principal flat out told me it's because I complained, because nobody ever thought about it before. No one ever thought about why drawing 20 pictures isn't showing. There's 100 other ways he could have shown that he understood the content of Hatchet instead of drawing 20 pictures. And I use that example all the time, and he agrees with that example completely.
I'm so glad you gave that example. First, it apparently resonated with Phyllis, so Phyllis, this resonated with her. But a couple of things here. So, I mean, we all see that that's a little bit goofy, and it's not like, she's probably not a mean person. She just had it in her head. This was what we're measuring, and this is how we do it. She was focused on the task, not the measure. And so in a lot of people's minds, to keep it fair, the task has to be the same. The homework has to be the same.
Correct. Exactly.
And when in all honesty, to be fair, we need to flex is to be fair.
Right. And that's why he's a 3rd grade teacher as example. She was flexible and, Fourth
Exactly.
grade with that same, he still did the same project, but the fine motor deficits weren't impacting his results.
It was a confounding variable. So the second thing I want to, react to that is when they allowed the accommodation for just her son. That's an accommodation. That's an after the fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Universal
Because I
design.
said something,
Yeah,
and I
but
shouldn't have had to.
something, right? So universal design for learning contrasts with that in that we wouldn't have even needed to know he was going to be in the class. We wouldn't have needed to know anything about a student with fine motor developmental delay is going to be in my class because I would have planned for it. I would have planned for, some students are great drawers, some haven't gotten that skill yet, some are great, and some just have preferences. And when you get to do something you prefer, you're so much more engaged. And so I probably wouldn't have even made it about the cereal box. I would have made the cereal box one option, and I would have made all kind of other options, and I would have let students come up with options. So I'm glad you gave that example because it also helps us think about the difference between UDL and accommodations. Now, our UDL that we put in place, it may be that a student ends up in our class and this UDL that I put in place didn't fully meet their needs. And at that point, I may need to make a modification or an accommodation, of course. And I'm still going to differentiate based on the individual students in my class. But if I've created a universally designed lesson, I'm not going to have to do so much work on that because I would have done the work on the front end. And so differentiation, accommodating, and all is so much easier if we've done this from the outset. So if you were with me earlier, we talked about how to accomplish this, it takes multiple brains, right? And it is sometimes the classroom teacher who has the best intervention idea or the best modification idea. And it is sometimes the special educator who has the best idea for teaching the lesson, just a curriculum idea. But it takes the multiple brains and our expertise and our experience to come together when we have the luxury of having multiple brains in the room to make decisions, to design experiences from the outset that really meet the needs of all. We don't have to be thinking about buckets of kids who have disabilities and don't. We just think about variability, the natural human variability that exists in children. So we have reached the end of our time. You're right, not being flexible is because of task-based instead of skill-based rubrics having already been created. And if that feels overwhelming, if teachers say, oh my gosh, it feels overwhelming to create all new rubrics, start with the skills that matter most. Start with a single point rubric. Some people like those better anyway. Start with just defining your model of excellence. You don't have to define for steps toward it. You can define and you all can read about single point rubrics, but you define your model of excellence and then you use that rubric to talk about strengths and areas of growth with kind of your North Star is what's written. So it feels overwhelming to recreate everything. Pick something, do a single point rubric, test it out, meet with your friends, talk to them about how it's going. And thank you, Phyllis, that's very sweet. Thank you all very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and have wonderful sessions the rest of your conference. And good luck going back to school. I'm cheering for you. All right, bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Young, for spending the day with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, it was a delight. Have a great day.